survivors, I'm an alcoholic.
Amen.
And it's an honor and a privilege to be here today, to be asked to speak, to do any service whatsoever in AA. I consider it a great honor. And not only is it a great honor, it is what has saved my life. I would be dead, or in jail, or in some sort of a involuntary detention center if I wasn't in service. It's really saved my life. So just for the record, I've never been to jail. It would not work out well for me, and I'm very glad for that. But I did get arrested. But I had a couple of AA buddies come pick me up from the station and brought me home, so I did not have to actually go to jail. Again, AA was taking care of me, but it took me a long time to get to the point where I would let AA take care of me. So I grew up in Elmira, New York, which is basically the middle of nowhere. Most people that have heard of it have only heard of it because it's got 2 maximum security prisons. So it used to be an old steel town, but that when the steel boom died, it became nothing, except for a couple of prisons. So I grew up with an alcoholic family, alcoholics, drug addicts, and I remember when I was 12 years old, I think I was 12, I think it was 7th grade, and for health class, the DARE officer came in and talked to us about drugs and alcohol, and talked to us about marijuana. And after everybody left the room, I walked up to him and I was like, I think my parents smoke marijuana, which they did. And I later learned that I wasn't supposed to do that, because if I do that, the police are gonna take me away, because CPS came and investigated and all that fun stuff. But anyway, the point I was gonna make there was that when I was 12, we had this piece of paper that said, I'm not going to use drugs and I'm not going to drink. And I signed that paper and I believed it. I swore there is no way I'm going to do those things. Why would I want to drink alcohol and lose control of everything? That's insane. No one would want to do that. That's horrible. And so I signed that piece of paper and I really meant it. I was not going to drink. I was not going to do drugs. I did not want to drink or do drugs until I tried drinking. And then I really liked to drink. So the first time I drank was my friend's, I was 14, it was the summer before high school. My friend's older brother was home from college, and he bought us a 12-pack. 4 of us went down to the river to drink the 12-pack, so 12 divided by 4, 3 beers each. I drank those 3 beers. I didn't like the taste of them. I never really cared that much for the taste of alcohol. But I drank those 3 beers and it set me free. It wasn't enough to get me wasted. I definitely wanted more, but that was all there was. So that was the start and end of my social drinking. The next day, my friends called me and said, hey, we're going out to the movies or whatever. Can you come out? And I lied to my friends and said, no, I'm grounded. I beat up my little sister or something. I don't know what lie I made up, but I lied and said, no, I can't go out. I've got to stay home. I'm in trouble. I'm grounded. And it was so that I could stay home and steal boxed wine and cheap vodka from my parents and actually get drunk. And I proceeded to get drunk every day from that day forward until, I don't know when, sometime in grad school. And then it was only periodic days of not drinking. But yeah, so when I was in high school, I got drunk 3 times a day, every day. I didn't tell anybody about it. I didn't brag about it. It wasn't something that was public knowledge. It was my thing. It's the thing I did that made me feel good enough to be around other people. I didn't know it at the time, but I was pretty much born with selfishness, self-centeredness, and fear running my life. When I drank those 3 beers out in the woods, those things faded away and I became awesome, or at least good enough. So when I was in high school, I I had special permission to go to the school because my parents were alcoholics. We moved around a lot, and I ended up getting special permission to go to the school where my friends were that were in the school I was in when I was younger. But I couldn't get bused there because I was out of the district. So my dad would drop me off at my friend's house in the morning, and then we'd walk from there to school. I don't know how. It still baffles me to this day. I think it's the magic of active alcoholism. I found the handle of Philadelphia blended whiskey that my friend's mom kept behind her headboard. So every morning, I think she probably could have qualified to be an alcoholic, but I can't say that. I don't know for sure, but I mean, she had a handle of Philadelphia blended whiskey that she replenished pretty regularly behind her headboard. So, but anyway, she had an ironing board and an iron and a measuring cup, which I guess like you put like water in the, I don't know. Anyway, so I learned in health class. I am a very good student. Not always, but when it's important. I learned in health class that 1 beer is the same as 1 ounce of whiskey. When I was 14 years old, a 6-pack was perfect. So I took the handle of whiskey, the measuring cup, I poured 6 ounces of whiskey in the measuring cup, I plugged my nose, I put back 6 ounces of whiskey, just chugged it down, went in the bathroom, drank a couple mouthfuls of water, a little bit of mouthwash, went to school. So I was good for the first half of school easily, nice and toasty. After school, I went back to the same friend's house. They also had a handle of Philadelphia blended whiskey under the kitchen sink. I knew about that one. They also had sweet vermouth, which I think like you make some drink with them. I don't know, but the sweet vermouth I tried, no way. But the whiskey, I like whiskey. So anyway, so I repeated the process after school, and then my dad picked me up at around 5 or 6. Then I went home. And after dinner, my parents went into their bedroom to smoke pot. And while they were in their bedroom, I stole boxed wine and cheap vodka to get drunk for a 3rd time that day. I did that pretty much every day of the week. It's amazing how creative one can be when they want alcohol, but the alcohol may not be quite accessible yet. So the boxed wine, you gotta like open, there's perforations on the box and you pull the little spout out, but it's obvious. If there's a box of wine that has been unopened, it would be very obvious to open that box of wine, right? So, by the magic of alcoholism, I determined that if you take the box and you flip it upside down, you take a sharp knife, you cut through the glue that holds the box together, you can pull the bag of wine out, drain about 1 liter out of it, put it back in, re-glue it, flip it back upside down. You can't take the top off, you gotta do the bottom because you need the weight of the wine to push the glue back down to get it to reseal. So, yeah, so creativity. If you're really good, you can take a plastic handle of vodka that's unopened, loosen the top without breaking the little band off, and squeeze some vodka out into a glass. And then you squeeze the air out of it, you turn it back up, right side up, you squeeze the air out of it, and then you hold it, and then you tip it back upside down in a different glass with water in it, and you suck some of the water back up into the vodka. And it's an unopened bottle of vodka that has been tampered with. So anyway, yeah. So that's my alcoholism. I figured it out. You know, I didn't get into a whole lot of trouble in high school. I was a good student. I didn't go to school that much, but I learned when I needed to go. Well, there was an attendance policy, and if you miss more than 20 days, you fail. So I missed 20 days. And then my senior year, they lifted the attendance policy, and I missed like 46 days or something crazy. But I knew when the important days to show up were. I paid attention. I knew when the exams were. When I was in school, I didn't waste time screwing around. Like, we had downtime in school. During that downtime, I did the important assignments so that when I got out of school, I could do whatever I wanted. I kept my grades up. My mom made a deal that she said, if you keep getting A's and B's, whenever you want to skip school, I'll call in sick for you. And so like I spent most of my senior year going to bars in outside of Elmira. Ithaca's like a big college town, and they have a great music scene there. I discovered some bands, God Street Wine, the Omnibus Sea Pods, and we were going to see them almost every night. And if I was too tired to go to school the next day, it was no big deal. I had hair back then, which I really, it was beautiful. I did Pantene Pro V shampoo and conditioner, and once a week VO5 hot oil treatment. I had women tell me that they would kill for hair like mine. It was beautiful hair until it wasn't. But anyway, I was bigger than most of the other kids. I could grow a goatee. I had long hair, and so getting into the bars, if I went before my friends, just alone, they wouldn't card me. And I would get the bracelet and be able to drink, but I usually couldn't afford to drink in bars. But anyway, so high school was fun. Drinking was fun, and I loved it, and it made me feel good. And I could not, at that point, ever foresee a day of not drinking. That just didn't make any sense. I guess I probably didn't really experience hangovers because I didn't ever really stop having alcohol in my system. I don't know if that's good or bad, but anyway, I went to college. I didn't think I was going to get into college, but when I was 17, I was in a car accident. My friend was driving, and we hit a tree going 70 miles per hour. I broke this wrist. This part of my arm was over here. I popped my liver. I was in intensive care for like a week. So yeah, so that was the first liver thing right there. Is I ruptured my liver from the seatbelt in a car accident. Later on, I had fatty liver. I'm also an alcoholic, and so yeah, so my liver and I have been through the ringer, but my liver numbers are actually good right now because of AA. But anyway, so yeah, I because of that car accident, I got a settlement and I was able to go to college, which was great. I did not want to join the Navy. I would not have been able to join the Navy. I would have tried to join the Navy and then they would have kicked me out. But college, you can drink all you want in college, and I mean, as long as you're doing the work, nobody seems to care. And so I liked college. It was fun. I wasn't a great student because I was blacked out most of the time. But I was good enough. And I think the biggest thing was that I liked what I did and I got excited about it. So as a result of how excited I got about it, I basically got recruited by someone to become a PhD student. She said, "What are you doing after college?" And I said, "I don't know." And she said, "You're coming to work for me." And so I stayed where I was and entered the PhD program, drinking the whole while. I remember taking my electronics exam, the final exam. So someone had told me that the lowest grade you can get in that class was a B, and I figured I was going to try to prove them wrong. So for that class, I stayed up all night studying. I did no studying, but I did not stop drinking, and I did not sleep whatsoever. So at 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, I was wasted. And I went to the exam, and it was it's like the chair where there's the little table part, and it's all one unit. But I kept like falling out of it. Like I couldn't stay in my seat, and somehow or another I got to be in that class, just like everybody said. But that came back to bite me because for my PhD project, I needed to know electronics. And it's funny that how much, when I was a student, grades seemed like the most important thing in the world. And for me, a B was perfect. A B, you can do a little bit of work and get a B, but not that much work. The extra work you have to do to get an A was unacceptable in my mind. But the grades, I focused on the grades a lot, and it has nothing to do with grades. It's all about what you learn. So anyway, my freshman year, right off the bat, I met this kid, Steve Wankmuller. He was a good guy. We were perfect together. We went to the parties. He wanted to meet the girls and look like he was drinking. And I wanted to meet the girls and drink. So we would get our drinks, and I would drink mine, and then we would switch cups. So I got drinks twice as fast as everybody else because I was drinking his drinks. I didn't know anybody when I went away to college, and he was the first person that I really met that, you know, we clicked. It was every morning at, 8 o'clock in the morning, he would be banging on my bedroom door, let's go get breakfast. And then go get breakfast, and we both go to our classes, and then afterwards I come back, I go back to bed, and then at noon he's banging on my door, let's go get lunch. We did it. When we weren't in class, we hung out together all the time. And he dragged me to this meeting to join the Albany State Outing Club, and we became members of the Outing Club, and we went hiking in the woods and all this stuff, and it was fun. We met new people. And then in late October, we went on a trip to Snowy Mountain up in the Adirondacks, and we hiked up the mountain together. But when we were at the top, we were about to head back down with everybody. Someone actually brought a little grill up there. This was one of not the high peaks, but it's one of the high peaks region. And someone had a backpack with a grill, and we grilled like hot dogs and stuff on the top of the mountain. But anyway, we were up there, we were about to head back down, and I was waiting for him, and he said, no, go ahead, go meet new people, I see you every day. And we split up. And that was the last time I saw him. I don't know who he ended up finding to walk down the mountain with, but he didn't make it out. He slipped and fell and died. And I want to say that I can easily pretend that the reason that I drank so much after that was that he died, but I didn't drink any more after that than I did before that. I probably used it as an excuse to not go to class or to be obnoxious or whatever. But it definitely devastated me. Like Jeanette said, the another event in the Adirondacks when I almost ran her and my friend Tom over was partly triggered by the fact that it was the anniversary of his death, and then the time that I tried to drive my car off the Mid-Hudson Bridge was his birthday. It's hard. I never learned how to deal with that kind of stuff. And honestly, I thought that I dealt with it better than I have, but I still can't say his name without crying. But anyway, so as an undergrad, I wasn't a great student, but I was good enough. Well, actually, my first advisor said he didn't think I was good enough to be a physics major. But the woman who I had been taking some classes with, she thought that I was great because, when we were doing an experiment and we got it to work, I was literally jumping up and down because I was so excited. I was like, this is awesome, yes, we did, and it's not so much working with students that are exceptional. The students that are exceptional, I have learned, don't need the teacher. It's the students who need some help but are very enthusiastic that are the most fun to work with. And so because I was fun to work with, she sort of recruited me and maybe basically she turned me into a slave. For like, I think I was getting paid $11,000 a year, but I was working 20 hours. There was one 6-month period, 20 hours a day. Literally, I would get picked up at 7 a.m. and they would drop me off at 3 a.m. They bought me dinner, which was nice. But that included weekends, Christmas, my birthday, New Year's, is because we had submitted an abstract to a conference that said, we have these great results and we're going to present them, but we didn't have those great results yet. She didn't have drinking in trouble in her life, but she definitely had some sort of unmanageability. But anyway, so that was an interesting time. When you're at home for 4 hours and you're an active alcoholic, it can be very challenging. Luckily, I had an active alcoholic roommate who was my friend Steve, the one who died. It was his roommate in college that then became one of my best friends afterwards. We bonded over Steve's death, and he became a good friend of mine. And I was living with him off campus because when we were on campus, I was on residential probation for, I think, 3 years after I graduated, which I didn't quite understand. It meant that if I came back and I got in trouble in the dorms after I graduated, I was going to get kicked out of school. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, so we moved off campus. But he was a great roommate because every time I got home at 3 o'clock in the morning, there was a handle of, usually it was 10 High, which is the plastic bottle bourbon. Every once in a while, it was Jim Beam, but he worked several jobs while in school, and he always had money, and so he was nice. And every time I got home, on my bed there was a handle of whiskey. So what do you do when you've only got 4 hours until you have to be back at work? Well, you drink fast, right? So I would polish off a handle of whiskey. That's the equivalent of like 60 shots of whiskey in 3 hours. I would pass out for 45 minutes. I would shower for 15 minutes. And then my PhD advisor and her husband were back at my door wanting me to go back to the lab. I would continue to get drunker until 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Never sobered up, but I mean it was rough. I mean I joke, but it's not so much of a joke, and say that I woke up one day from a 10-year blackout with a PhD in physics. And a lot of people say things like, "Oh, that's amazing, that's so great," and it's not. I got to tell you, when you have certain credentials, but you don't actually know any of the material that you're supposed to know, it's a curse. It really is, and it haunted me for a long time. So for the very end of grad school, I had stopped drinking mostly. I had stopped drinking for a little while. Most people take 3 years to write a dissertation. I was given 6 months because my advisor was leaving the university because she didn't get tenure. So she said, if you don't finish it in 6 months, then you're not going to finish it with me, and you're going to have to start all over with somebody else. So for that 6 months, I quit drinking, sort of. I only drank occasionally, and it was the bottle of vodka that was in the closet. You know, but I finished, I graduated, and I mean, there were times in there where I definitely freaked out because I was drinking around the clock too much, and things were starting to go bad, and then I would take a quick break from drinking, you know, a week or two. I never, at that point, hadn't considered AA or anything. I mentioned that in grad school, we met at a friend's birthday party at an Indian restaurant, and I don't know, I want to say it was love at first sight, because it really, I mean, she was talking about like gnomes in Minnesota, or no, trolls in Minnesota, and I don't know, I thought she was great. She had a great personality. She was smarter than I was, and by the way, I'm not smart. I am not smart. It's a scientifically proven fact at this point. But I always wanted to be smart, and for a long time I really thought I was smart, but I'm not. So anyway, so we had moved in together, and we were living together, and I stopped drinking to write my dissertation, and for the most part, and then for my graduation, and I was completely unaware of this. They called my name. I started walking out to get my, you know, my PhD. Well, probably was just a piece of paper because it's like fake, which whatever. But I'm walking out, and then I hear like this eruption of people screaming my name, and I turned around, and I guess Jeanette, maybe, and Tom had like invited like my parents and friends, like high school friends, cousins, and there was like this whole cheering section that was there for me, and then they threw me a big surprise party, and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna have a glass of champagne, and without a defense against the first drink, it was over. So I had stopped drinking publicly for like 6 months at that point. But now that I was drinking publicly again, it was okay for me to keep drinking publicly, right? And that's usually not, well, I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you're not done, you're not done. So anyway, so I started drinking again. I don't really remember much of that night, but I think I was probably pretty crazy. Yeah, and so I got out of school. My PhD advisor got me my first job, so she left to work for a company, and she got me a job there. It was at a very large company's very prestigious, research facilities, and so I'm not good at working, and especially not when I'm drinking. When I'm drinking, it's just I can't work. I was pretty not good at school, but I could at least manage and navigate the school system when I was drinking, but not when I was working, and so I was miserable. I did not like working. I hated it. I don't like being told what to do, when to do it, how to do it. Like that doesn't fly with me. So anyway, so I was miserable. I didn't know it at the time, and I wouldn't have been able to express it at the time, but I had grown to hate my life. And more so, I had grown to hate myself. I mean, alcoholics are sick people when they are active. And I was becoming sicker and sicker and sicker. I don't know what I was doing in blackouts, but the things that people told me I was doing in blackouts were not nice. I was becoming mean, verbally abusive, emotionally abusive to Jeanette. Abusive to the cats, which is not, that's not how I roll. I love animals. I love my animals. I love my cats to death. So anyway, after working for about 1.5 years, we were with our friends up in the Adirondacks camping, and that's when the craziness really happened. I woke up one morning from a blackout and found that Jeanette wasn't sleeping with me. We were in a cabin, and we had a room and with a bed, and she wasn't in the bed with me. And so I got up and I was like, hey, what's going on? And she explained to me that the night before I had wet myself and she didn't want to be sleeping with me. I guess I was also a bit of a jerk, and I fondled her best friend's girlfriend, who happened to be a lesbian. Yeah, so I was feeling pretty embarrassed. And I didn't want to be there anymore. I don't like feeling embarrassed. It's not a good feeling. So I didn't want to be there anymore, and so I started packing my stuff up and said, I'm going to go home. And everybody was waking up at that point, and they were like, no, don't go home, just stay here. It's not that big of a deal. You're okay, stay here. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to stay here, I'm going to stay here. And that's when I started drinking at them. I drank everything that I had, and then somehow or another ended up driving back into town to get more. I was on a downward spiral. I hated myself, I hated my life, and I became determined to die. So I think it was even as an undergrad, probably like when I was probably legal at that point, probably around 21, was when I started to drink, and I would, after getting drunk, go from being happy and having fun to being kind of miserable, kind of sad, kind of dark, saying things like, I don't feel like I want to live anymore, and things like that. And then, it just got worse. And so this event was the first time that I was determined to kill myself. I had no desire to live anymore. We were up in the mountains in the Adirondacks, and my plan was to get in my car and drive my car off of the mountain into a dry riverbed and kill myself. So I got into my car after fighting and arguing with people. Jeanette and Tom were standing behind my car, so I put my car in reverse and started trying to rock back and forth to get them to move out of the way, but they weren't moving. And that was pissing me off, frankly. So I put it in reverse, and I know that the coefficient of kinetic friction is a lot lower than the coefficient of static friction. So I floored it, and the wheels spun, which I thought they would, but I couldn't be guaranteed of that. And if I had melted through some ice and hit a rock or something, you know, some of the gravel that was under there, I would have gone backwards and I would have run them both over. Yeah, so I definitely, at the very least, can honestly say that I put Jeanette and my best friend Tom in harm's way, very much so, and I put their lives at risk that day. Eventually they got out of the way, and I pulled out and I started driving down the mountain, but luckily, so I also, one slightly smart thing I did was I did not get my driver's license until after I got my PhD. I knew that the way I drank, it was going to be a bad thing when I got my driver's license. So I was a pretty bad driver. The way I learned how to drive really was playing racing games, which is not the way you should learn how to drive. So luckily I was a terrible driver. I had like a year and a half of experience driving at that point, and it was icy, snowy roads, and I went 50 feet down the road and ended up in a snowbank. And then that's when all kinds of other insanity ensued. The women and they're not weapons, really tools, were removed from the cabin, axes and knives and things like that are not intended to be weapons, but they were all removed from the cabin. The women were removed from the cabin because I was going insane. The guys that were there cornered me. I almost pushed one of them through a big giant plate glass window. They cornered me, and I did not want to be alive. And so I started beating my head up against the side of the log cabin wall, blood everywhere. Eventually they calmed me. I would have been happy if I could have just knocked myself out, but I couldn't even do that. Eventually they calmed me down, and then the police showed up. And I thought they were taking me to jail, but they took me to the psych ward. And at the psych ward, I guess my BAC was too high for me to sign a piece of paper saying I would admit myself to the psych ward, I found it interesting that the nurse would not say what the piece of paper I was signing was, but my friends would. And they said it was that I was going to spend the night there because they thought I might have a concussion. So after the fact, I kind of figured out that they tricked me into signing myself in, but they had to wait like hours for my BAC to be low enough to legally sign a piece of paper admitting myself to the hospital. But anyway, so my first 72-hour mandatory lockup, and the doctor there said he thought I was an alcoholic, and there was no arguing that fact. I probably knew I was an alcoholic. I just didn't like. No, I knew I was an alcoholic, and I was proud of the fact that I was an alcoholic. I knew that if I ever wanted to stop drinking, that the AA existed. My friend, one of my closest friends' dad, he was in AA growing up, and I knew that it was a thing. And if I wanted to stop, then I knew I'd come to AA and they would fix it for me. It's not that simple, but anyway, so at the hospital, the doctor said he thought I was an alcoholic. I convinced them that I was bipolar, and so they put me on all kinds of drugs, one of them being Thorazine, which is not a safe drug to take if you are driving. But anyway, so one of my friends in high school had been to AA, and he took me, he and a bunch of us went to my first AA meeting once I got out. So when I was in the hospital up there, this was in Glens Falls Hospital up in the Adirondacks in New York State. When I got discharged, there was a room, there were probably 20 people in that room that drove from Elmira, New York, like 7 hours. My PhD advisor and her husband came from Albany. I had cousins that came. I had high school friends from Elmira. My mom came from Elmira. I mean, it was the number of hours of driving that it took to get all of those people in that room must have been 100 hours. And they came and they said, "We love you. We want to help you. You you have a problem, we're gonna do whatever it takes to get you better. And I don't know, so active alcoholics are sick, and it's hard for me to remember that sometimes because I'm the one who lived it. I feel like I was just a monster. But I was in my disease, and I don't know what I said, but I did not take what they said seriously. I did not care about what they said. I did not believe what they said. I did not want help. At that point, I would probably have said, I'm not hurting anybody except maybe myself. And I was wrong. I was wrong. So anyway, my friend Tim took me, and Tom and Jamie and Jeanette, and we went to my first AA meeting, and it was 2 speakers, and they each spoke for about a half an hour, and I identified with every single word out of their mouths. I couldn't believe it. Like, they explained everything that I felt. I was right with them until they got to AA and they went through the steps and all that stuff, and then I was like, nope, that's not going to work for me. I'm an atheist. I can't do those steps. That's insane. I can't. There's no way. And so I immediately closed AA off and said, I can't do this. This isn't for me. This will never work for me. I'm different. I'm special. Don't you know who I am? Absurdities, basically. But you can't get sober in AA if you're not open to doing the things that AA suggests, right? I mean, that's just logic, right? I mean, that's 4-year-old logic. Like, you don't need to be smart to figure that out, but I wasn't smart enough to figure that out. So for the next 2 or 3 years, I went to an occasional meeting. I pretended to go to some meetings. I got kind of messed up before some meetings. I do remember, like, leading a meeting, and I got there and someone asked me to do it, and I was like, okay, but I had to, like, hold on to the tables to get to the front of the room. I was so messed up. And for some reason, I guess I had no integrity. But I had no problem doing that and pretending that everything was great. So I didn't believe that AA could work for me. I even had a hard time believing that it worked for the people that said it worked for them. I was like, no, these people are lying. They must be, drinking on the weekends or whatever. But after going to AA for enough meetings, slowly getting to know some of the people, a few of the people, I got phone numbers, and I would go to meetings with some of the people. After a couple of years, I saw, wow, these people are happy. They're not drinking. Their lives aren't in shambles. Things aren't getting worse for them. Maybe I should try this. So I gave it my best shot, which wasn't very good. I don't know. I mean, it probably took me a long time to put together, even like 6 weeks. But I kind of tried. It's pretty easy for me to get frustrated and not do anything. I think I put together like a year or so, and I wasn't sober for most of that first job that I had. But I think I had a little bit of time when I lost that job. But I lost the job. And so then, I mean, if I had been smart, I would have seized the opportunity to start going to a lot more meetings and actually try to get sober. But I still didn't. I don't know. I mean, maybe I wanted to be sober, but I was still convinced that I could have fun drinking. I could have fun if I just do it right. It's going to be fun again at some point in the future. And that's all I ever wanted out of drinking and doing drugs, was to have a good time. Just a good time tonight, no big deal. But anyway, so I lost the job. I ended up getting another job. And the new job, they told me, I could stay in Albany and I would have to just drive down to Fishkill, to the Poughkeepsie area, 2 times a week for meetings, and then the rest of the time I could work from home. But I need to go to Israel for 6 weeks for training. So I had been going to meetings. I had about a year away from a drink, went to Israel for 6 weeks, and I did not go to any meetings there because I didn't have a car. The closest meeting was like 10 or 15 miles away, and so I couldn't get to meetings. But I didn't drink. I was there for 6 weeks without going to meetings, and I didn't drink. Oh my God. I figured it out. Got back to New York, started working at the new job. Right when I got back, or maybe it was right before I got back, they told me, no, we changed our mind. You have to move down to Poughkeepsie, Fishkill, whatever, to be close to where you're working. And so they put me up in a hotel during the week while Jeanette was basically at home packing and getting ready to move us down to Poughkeepsie. Yeah, so I'm in a hotel for the week, but I didn't drink when I was in a hotel in Israel. So I'm not going to drink if I'm in a hotel in New York. I don't have to go to meetings. I didn't drink. And that, obviously, that's flawed logic, and it doesn't work. So that didn't last too long. I ended up picking up a drink because it's going to be fun this time. And then that repeats. That story just repeats over and over for about 10 years. Putting together a little bit of time here and there, up to 3 years at one point. But basically what would happen, and I am very grateful for the fact that it was disastrous every time immediately. I thought I was going to have a good time, but I did not. I ended up in the hospital or in the back of a police car every time, and you know, it went from 6 hours and then I'm in the back of the ambulance to 2 hours and then I'm in the back of the cop car. So like Jeanette said, the last time I picked up a drink was January 6th of 2018. It was my friend Steve's birthday. Jeanette was out of town. I was feeling miserable. Like I hated myself. I hated my life. And so I got a cheap liter of vodka and I basically pounded it down in an hour and a half or 2 hours. Hated myself, hated my life, and now I'm drunk. That's not a good thing. So I ended up destroying the apartment. I put my sword through the TV, terrorized the cats. I trashed the place. And then basically I looked around and I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't know where I was planning on going, but I got in my car and we lived just a couple blocks from the Mid-Hudson Bridge. And I got in my car, I was leaving. I don't know where I was going. But I wanted to go fast, and the person in front of me was not going fast, and that really pissed me off. So I decided, screw this, I'm done. I'm driving my car off the side of the bridge, and I floored it and turned the steering wheel and tried to drive off the bridge, and they do not make bridges so that Subaru Outbacks can drive off. I did not drive off the bridge. I did not, from what I can tell, I did not even dent the guardrail. Totaled my car. I got a DWI. It was the coldest night it had been in like 4 years. And the officer was not particularly pleased to be standing on a bridge where the wind was whipping, giving me a field sobriety test, which I had no hope of passing. But anyway, so I ended up calling one of my AA friends who came to pick me up and brought me home. Went back to my group. So in my group, once we moved to Poughkeepsie, I found a group called Alcoholics Only, which to me sounded like a good group because, yeah, I've done a lot of drugs and I've been chemically addicted to other chemicals than alcohol, but I'm an alcoholic and I've done drugs alcoholically because that's what I do. But I thought it sounded like they had a good message, and the first time I went to that group, I remember it was a business meeting, and this guy Gary, who I think I've actually got, yep, I got Gary with me. Good guy. He said, well, it's your first meeting here. Why don't you join the group? And I said, okay, I need a home group. And I was used to a home group that just met once a week, and that was the extent of it. I joined the business meeting, they gave me this calendar, and then we went around and filled out the calendar, and they were like, okay, tomorrow you gotta call this person. The next night you gotta call this person. And it turns out that the way the group worked was that the group goes out 7 nights a week. We meet twice a week, so we have home group twice a week, but the other 5 nights a week we travel as a group. And that night I heard one of the best things I've ever heard. I never have to go to another meeting alone. And that was pretty powerful. And I haven't, and it's been great. So then when I was up in Albany, they said, try to go to 90 meetings in 90 days, here's a meeting list. No one held me accountable, right? This group, they take you to 90 meetings in 90 days, and that's what they were proposing, and don't you know who I am? I'm important and busy. But I feel like I hold a world record for doing the most 90 in 90s, but I'm sure that that's just me being arrogant and egotistical. I did a lot of 90 in 90s with that group. But the last one, so in January 2018, I did another 90 in 90. And then, started my journey again. In August, I had convinced my doctor, my psychiatrist, I was off the Thorazine long ago at this point, thankfully. I had convinced my psychiatrist that I could use something to help me with anxiety. And the medication that they prescribed for that is literally alcohol in pill form. And I didn't quite realize what it was, but I had taken it as prescribed several times in the past, and it was somewhat useful. And so I convinced him that because the semester was starting, I was a part-time college instructor at that point because I'd lost another job. And so he prescribed me a bottle of pills that I guess, I don't know, it was the beginning of the semester. I definitely was stressed out, and I don't remember taking any of the pills, but I guess I took the whole bottle. The blackout, I don't know how many days of a blackout it was. All I know is that I was at the bottom of the hill. The hospital was up the hill behind me. I don't remember if I was discharged or if I just walked out of there. Honestly, to this day, I have no idea. I was wearing a pair of, my first pair of brand name Crocs, not the ones from CVS, like the Croc brand ones that Jeanette had bought for me. But I normally wear socks with them because the rubber, the material pulls on my foot hair and it hurts. So I'm at the bottom of the hill. Don't remember how I got out of there. I just know that I want to go home. My feet hurt from the rubber ripping out my foot hair. I'm utterly miserable, terribly miserable. Kicked my brand new Crocs off, walked home barefoot. I got home, nobody was there, didn't have the keys to my apartment, kicked in the door to my apartment, and then went in and sat on my bed and said, I hate this. And the really amazing thing, the icing on the cake for how not smart I am, is that it took over a year for one of my group mates to point out the fact that the first time I went to the hospital, 20 people from all over New York State came to show up and say they loved me, they wanted to help me, and that we were going to get through this together. The last time I was in the hospital, I walked home alone, barefoot, and kicked in the door to my apartment. That's what I did. That's what drinking did to me. And it wasn't me. And this was the first time that I really realized what alcoholism had done. At that point, I didn't care about me anymore. I could have lived or died and it wouldn't have mattered. It was the people that I did care about that really hurt that I had done that much damage to everybody around me that I walked home alone from the hospital barefoot because nobody could have me in their lives anymore. And that's the point where drinking became unacceptable. It sucks. It was horrible, and I don't ever wish that anyone would have to feel that feeling. But it's what I needed. That emptiness is what brought me to sobriety. So I don't know my sobriety date. It was sometime in September of 2018. No idea what it was. I celebrated 6 years at the end of September because that's when I came back to the group and joined the group. And then that wasn't even quite enough, so I didn't drink after that. But I did, after being in my group, I was halfway through my 90 that time, and one of my group members was celebrating, and he invited a speaker in, and the speaker just talked about how much money he had and how many foundations he has started and how his family is so wealthy and how great he is and blah, 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 blah. And I got kind of pissed off and walked out of there. And then one of my group members came out and started yelling at me and said, I need to get God in my life. And that was no, I'm an atheist and no, screw you. So I just left and I started walking home and I was done with AA. I was totally done. I had no desire to be a member of AA anymore at that point. So I spent like 6 months not going to meetings, but it is interesting how when you spend enough time in AA, whether you like it or not, it changes you. I was finding myself doing things that I would not normally have done, but because I was taught to do them in AA, I was doing them. But anyway, my friend Gary got sick. And he was celebrating his last anniversary. So I went back to the group to see him celebrate. And then my friend Donald said, hey, I'm driving tomorrow night, you want me to pick you up? Just like I never left. He saved my life that day. He really did. I mean, he did not make a big deal out of it. He just said, hey, I'm driving tomorrow night, I'll pick you up, you're going to do a 90 again, and I did. And I stayed sober, and it's not because of me. So I still say that I'm an atheist just in the sense that I don't believe in a deity, but I believe in the power of love in AA. And I think the thing that I feel is the same thing that everybody who says they believe in God feels. I just don't think it comes from a being. I think it comes from us. I think it comes from life. I think all living things are connected on a level much deeper than we can ever understand. And that's coming from a physicist. So my life is, I hate this phrase, but I have a life that's beyond my wildest dreams now. The real difference is not that my life is that much different, it's that my dreams have changed. My old version of beyond my wildest dreams was sports cars and mansions and swimming pools and I don't know what else. Well, probably drugs and alcohol. My new version of beyond my wildest dreams is peaceful and I'm useful. I went from being a part-time college instructor at many different places around the Poughkeepsie area to having a full-time job, and I am the only physicist at the school I'm at. My ego and my arrogance wants me to be so great and important, and being the only physicist makes me so great and important, but no, it's the opposite. I'm the least important person at my job. There's no physics majors in my school. Right? I'm there to help the pre-med students learn physics for the MCAT. Like, I am the least important person at my job, and I have embraced that, and it has given me a freedom that I couldn't have gotten otherwise, and that's because I learned in AA to look at things from a different angle, a different perspective. Because there's no physics majors, it doesn't matter what I teach them. I expected my students to be great physicists when I started full-time last year, and they can't do math. And so after about a month, my expectations changed to maybe they could be good physicists. And then by the end of the year, they changed to, well, maybe I can help them get better at math. And so the good students are going to learn everything they need to learn no matter what. The students who aren't going to do anything aren't going to do anything no matter what. If I can help them in any way, that's good. And so I wouldn't have, there's no way I would have gotten the full-time job. I would have been teaching part-time for the rest of my life if I hadn't learned in AA to be of service, and that I need to love everyone that I meet, or at least try to. Patience, tolerance, understanding, love, those things, those are all lost words. It's not my nature. My nature is selfishness and self-centeredness. So before, when I was younger and I had no idea that I was selfish, self-centered, and full of fear, I come into AA, I go through the steps, I try to keep those steps in my life to the best of my ability, and what I've learned is that after going through all of that, I'm still selfish, self-centered, and full of fear. The difference is that I'm aware of it. And being aware of it, and maybe being 1% less selfish, it makes me a better person. So I came to AA because people told me I had to. Eventually, I started coming to AA because I wanted to stop drinking. Then, that took me a long time. And then, the reason I stay in AA, well, it is my duty to help the next sick and suffering, 100%. And if I steal from AA, I'm a monster. Like, in my mind, coming here, getting sober, and then leaving, that's not fair, right? AA gave me a gift, I need to give it away. But beyond that, AA has made me a better person. AA has made me a person that I didn't ever even consider being before. I never thought that I would be a good, it's not that I thought I was a bad person, but I never thought that I would be useful or helpful. I thought that I was just going to do what I wanted to do and get on through life, But like I have a lot of students now, and they love me. I got the full-time job because I had Lucas, Maggie, and Chelsea, the three of them. Like before I even interviewed, they were like, "You're getting the job here." They loved me and they rallied for me. They went to every single faculty member and said, "You have to get him." And it's because I cared about them and I shared openly with them. So I think that's another thing, is I'm very honest with my students because of AA. I'm very clear with my expectations, and I let them know that if they're trying hard and they're improving, then we're going to work something out and you're going to be okay and you're going to get a decent grade, because that's all they care about. But now I know from experience that not knowing the material is actually way worse than getting a bad grade. Those two jobs that I had that I lost, I didn't know anything, and it was rough. I was not equipped for those jobs because of my drinking. The nice thing about working where I am, there are no physics majors, so I really only have to know Physics 1 and Physics 2, the basic intro level stuff, and I've gotten good at that over the years. So, I have a great life. Jeanette and I are I don't know why she's still with me, but I will say that I'm quite sure that if she hadn't found Al-Anon when she did, that I probably wouldn't have gotten sober. Because she did not show up at the hospital. She didn't come pick me up from the hospital that last time. I had to suffer, and she would have come and picked me up if she had not been in Al-Anon. It's doubly powerful being in a relationship where both of us are in recovery, and I'm very grateful for that, because I know a lot of people who are in my AA group whose wives say, the drinking problem is your problem, I don't have a problem. And that statement alone to me sounds like there's an issue. So, you know, I'm very grateful for having her be in Al-Anon and me being in AA. You know, we have our 4 cats. I lost 3 cats in the last 5 years, and I didn't drink over them. And that's something I never thought would be possible. I love them, and I thought that it was going to drive me insane and that I would be a raving lunatic when I lost them. But I've lost 3 cats in sobriety and haven't drank over it. Never even thought about it. You know, the first miracle of recovery for me was that the desire to drink was gone, and the second miracle, and this, it's probably been about 1.5 years or 2 years since I actually realized this. I don't think about dying on a daily basis anymore. And that's pretty powerful, because from the age of 14 to the age of probably 42, I wished for death at least 1 time a day, every single day. And so I don't want to die anymore. I joke about figurative death, but not literal death. Like, I figuratively die every day when my students are making mistakes, or I'm tired and my back hurts, you know, figurative death, but not literal death. So, I don't know, life is good. I'm always exhausted, but that's because I'm being useful. I'm of service now. The career that I have now is something that I honestly wish there were just more hours in the day so I could do more. I've never, ever had a job like that. I've never had a job where I wanted to actually just do more stuff, be more useful. And that's pretty wild. So one of the things I joke about is that working is for chumps, and that's why I teach. So it is a lot of work, and right now I'm in the midst of grading 106 exams, but I'm here instead, so they're gonna have to wait a little bit longer. But I don't know. It's amazing how I got so much more out of life than I ever expected, and that I would have never had any of that if I wasn't an alcoholic and if I didn't find AA. And that almost makes me say I'm grateful that I'm an alcoholic. I don't know if that's, I mean, I guess it's true. I mean, I wouldn't have any of this if I wasn't an alcoholic who found AA. It's amazing how that curse turned into such a blessing. So I'm very grateful for AA, grateful for this opportunity. Thank you all very much.